The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
What I'm certain of is that she accelerated in a way where she ran into the guy. I don't know what was in her heart and what was in her head, but I know that she violated the law, and I know that officer was acting in self-defense.
Good evening and welcome to the National News Desk, America's News Now. I'm Dee Dee Gatton, and we continue to follow breaking news out of Minneapolis following yesterday's fatal shooting during a federal immigration operation. Today, the administration standing behind the ICE officer who fired his weapon as the Minneapolis community remains on edge. Public school classes and other activities canceled today and tomorrow as a safety precaution. Protests and memorials continue to grow. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has asked residents to remain calm in the wake of the tragedy. All of this while rhetoric on both sides is becoming increasingly heated. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins joins us with the latest.
A political tinderbox igniting in Minnesota after an ICE agent shot and killed a 37-year-old woman Wednesday.
A group of left-wing radicals have been working tirelessly, sometimes using domestic terror techniques to try to make it impossible for the President of the United States to do what the American people elected him to do, which is enforce our immigration laws.
Both parties using the moment to megaphone their political priorities, sparking deep polarization.
People in positions of power have already passed judgment, from the president to the vice president to Kristi Noem, have stood and told you things that are verifiably false, verifiably inaccurate.
Democrats painting the tragedy as an example of the dangers of the federal crackdown on immigration enforcement.
To ICE, get the out of Minneapolis.
The White House staunchly defending the ICE agents and the necessity of having a nation with laws.
Radicals in the Democrat Party are furious over this. They don't want our border secured or criminal illegal aliens being removed.
Tensions surrounding the increased presence of federal agents in Minneapolis have simmered for weeks.
We've dreaded this moment since the early stages of this ICE presence in Minneapolis. Not only is this a concern that we've had internally, we've been talking about it.
Republicans argue this type of rhetoric created the atmosphere that led to the death of the woman in Minneapolis.
It's a tragedy of the making of the far left. They have radicalized a very small segment of the population, taught them that ICE agents are engaging in wide-scale violation of people's rights.
Some Democrats on Capitol Hill are calling to defund ICE, echoing the unpopular calls to defund the police after the murder of George Floyd in 2020, which, coincidentally, took place less than a mile away from Wednesday's shooting. In Washington, I'm Kayla Gaskins, reporting for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
As for the ICE agent who fired the shots, Homeland Security Secretary, who is in New York today, Kristi Noem, says he is out of the hospital after being struck by the vehicle yesterday and is recovering with his family. Vice President J.D. Vance says the agent is covered by immunity and will not face state prosecution. Minnesota officials say they have been blocked from conducting their own investigation into the matter.
We have learned that the Trump administration has now denied the state that ability to participate in the investigation. And I just want to make this as clear as possible to everyone. Minnesota must be part of this investigation.
They have not been cut out. They don't have any jurisdiction in this investigation.
More on this. In 1890, the Supreme Court ruled a federal officer cannot be held accountable in a state court for actions authorized by federal law within their proper duties. The Department of Homeland Security says it arrested dozens of illegal immigrants and members of the Dominican gang Trinitarios in New York City who are allegedly connected to the shooting of an off-duty ICE agent in July.
His attackers never should have been in this country, and they've been protected and were protected up until that point by sanctuary city policies. In fact, they had long criminal rap sheets and were released by the Biden administration.
Federal officials say the suspect shot the off-duty officer in a park in Manhattan and tried to rob him. The officer survived and asked to remain anonymous. 54 individuals were arrested in a takedown officials are calling Operation Salvo. Noem says the vast majority of them already have pending criminal charges. Police are searching for the suspects in a shooting that killed 2 people and injured 6 others near a church in Salt Lake City, Utah. The shooting happened last night during a funeral service in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints meeting house. Police said they don't believe the shooting was a targeted attack against the faith. They believe it stemmed from a dispute. Congress taking a big step today towards limiting President Trump's ability to unilaterally order additional military action in Venezuela. America's adversaries, including China, are watching closely as President Trump sets his sights on Venezuela's massive oil reserves. The National News Desk, Acha El-Nashar, reports from Washington.
In a new interview with the New York Times, President Trump was asked how long his administration will demand direct oversight of Venezuela following the capture of Nicolas Maduro. His answer, only time will tell. Pressed on specifics, 6 months, a year, longer? I would say much longer, the president replied.
If there was ever a moment for the Senate to find its voice, it is now.
Thursday morning, 5 Senate Republicans joining Democrats to advance a measure requiring Trump to get approval from Congress before future military action in Venezuela.
The motion is agreed to.
Senate Foreign Relations Chairman, Republican Jim Risch, confirms to us that Trump is pressuring Venezuela to cut ties with America's adversaries.
They have invited in the no-goodniks, Russia, China, Iran, setting up shop right in our backyard. That's simply not acceptable.
China, America's largest competitor economically and militarily, condemning Trump's orders in Venezuela from the start.
China firmly supports Venezuela in safeguarding its sovereignty, security, and legitimate rights and interests.
The president's new national security strategy states, we will deny non-hemispheric competitors the ability to position forces or other threatening capabilities or to own or control strategically vital assets in our hemisphere. Trump's moves in Venezuela are the biggest challenge to China's influence in the region to date. China is the top destination for Venezuelan oil exports, according to S&P Global. When Venezuela and China signed a trade agreement 20 years ago, then President Hugo Chavez called it a great wall against American dominance. In Beijing's strategy to expand its influence in Latin America in the past 2 decades, China's made roughly $100 billion in oil-backed loan agreements with Venezuela. Details are murky, but it's estimated Venezuela's outstanding debt to China is down to $10 to $20 billion. Now, militarily, China has a very limited presence in the Caribbean. Experts watching developments over the past week speculate that China's lack of response, aside, of course, from statements, signals that Beijing just isn't really interested in countering American military forces in the region.
But a good point that as we're watching what's going on in the Caribbean and South America, that we are also watching what's happening in Southeast Asia. The New York Times, though, Acha, releasing more of its interview with President Trump. What more are we learning about his vision for Venezuela?
Yeah, sure, Didi. You know, in a 2-hour interview that the president did with a handful of New York Times reporters, he was asked if he sees any limits on his powers as commander-in-chief. And Trump said, quote, yeah, there is one thing, my own morality, my own mind. It's the only thing that can stop me. He also said he doesn't need international law and is not looking to hurt people. Unclear specifically the context of that part of the conversation. But the Times also reports that Trump called the norms of a post-World War II globe unnecessary burdens on a superpower. Now, Didi, you'll recall immediately after Maduro's capture, Trump said that he's keeping the option of a second strike. At this moment, he says the Venezuelan government is cooperating with his demands, but based on what he just told the Times, he sees few restraints on whatever it is he chooses to do next.
Acha El-Nashar reporting tonight from Washington, D.C. Thank you. On the House side of Congress, lawmakers took several votes today, passing a funding measure for departments of Commerce, Justice, Science, and the Interior. These appropriations will be taken up by the Senate next week. In 2 other votes today, the House failed to override 2 President Trump vetoes. Each bill initially passed with large bipartisan support, but not enough Republicans voted against the president today. One bill sought to fund a water pipeline for southeast Colorado. The other would have given the Miccosukee tribe authority over part of the Florida Everglades. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. says the new dietary guidelines announced yesterday will, quote, revolutionize our nation's food culture and make America healthy again.
Today, we are here to celebrate the release of the dietary guidelines for Americans 2025 to 2030. the most significant reset of federal nutrition policy in history.
The guidelines center around 3 pillars. The first one includes protein, dairy, and healthy fats. The second is equally large and contains vegetables and fruits. The visual for you up on your screen here. The third pillar is smaller and includes whole grains. The defense team for former Uvalde schools officer Adrian Gonzalez secured a minor win today when the testimony of prosecutorial witness Stephanie Hale was stricken from the record. Hale, who was a teacher at Robb Elementary in 2022, testified on Tuesday against the defendant. Today, defense attorneys offered evidence that her initial comment on the shooting 4 days after the fact differed from what she swore during trial. Defense attorneys still say some damage to their case has been done.
A judge can ask a jury to exclude, but we can't make them unhear what they heard.
The judge says he thinks the discrepancy was negligent but not intentional and has denied the defense motion to declare a mistrial. Gonzalez faces up to 2 years in prison if convicted. Harvey Weinstein is considering pleading guilty to an unresolved rape charge to avoid a third trial, according to a judge. At hearing today, the judge also denied the disgraced movie producer's request to overturn his conviction of forcibly performing oral sex on a woman in 2006. That has a potential sentence of up to 25 years in prison. 3 people have been arrested in connection to a November burglary of the home of Cleveland Browns QB Shedeur Sanders. The detective in charge says the arrests were made in conjunction with law enforcement from Georgia, where the suspects are based, and is part of the growing theft rings against athletes.
They target high-end individuals that have a lot of money, and they go to their houses, they break in, and they take anything of value, and they go and sell it.
Sanders' home outside of Cleveland was broken into the weekend of his first NFL start in San Francisco. Property estimated to be about $200,000 was stolen. Cleveland police say a 4th suspect remains at large. Coming up next, a dramatic drop in the trade deficit and the impact this could have on America's GDP. Plus, the airline that is about to become the 4th global airline in the U.S. through a newly announced deal. And later, the threats an independent journalist now faces over his video alleging widespread fraud in Minnesota. We're back in 90 seconds. The country is still experiencing what analysts call a no hire, no fire economy. Look at the numbers. More Americans filed for jobless benefits in the last week of 2025, but filings still remain low despite a softening labor market. The number of filings rose by 8,000, totaling 208,000. This is viewed as a stand-in for layoffs and an indicator of the health of the job market. The trade deficit has reached its lowest level since 2009. A new Commerce Department report shows the October trade deficit was around $29 billion. That's about half of what economists had expected, according to FactSet. Analysts say this could fuel GDP growth, but tariffs driving the lower deficit, they're causing some degree of trade volatility.
We are creating a new Assistant Attorney General position who will have nationwide jurisdiction over the issue of fraud. Now, of course, that person's efforts will start and focus primarily in Minnesota, but it is going to be a nationwide effort because, unfortunately, the American people have been defrauded in a very nationwide way.
Vice President J.D. Vance there announcing today the creating of a new nominated position within the Department of Justice with the sole purpose of investigating and prosecuting fraud. This new Assistant Attorney General will be named in the next few days and then will face confirmation in the Senate. All of this as we learn more about what state officials knew about ongoing fraud in Minnesota. National correspondent Christine Frizzell has more.
The Department of Homeland Security sharing this video of federal investigators going door to door in Minnesota, collecting what it calls evidence of fraud. The Trump administration announcing a new Assistant Attorney General to focus on fraud.
I care about getting to the bottom of this fraud for the American people.
This following a video viewed more than 100 million times from conservative social media influencer Nick Shirley.
So this is Quality Learning Center. I meant to say Quality Learning Center.
Records show this now infamous daycare center closed its doors for good on Monday as the alleged fraud took center stage on Capitol Hill. State representatives told lawmakers the fraud has been rampant for more than a decade.
Why would Governor Walz let $9 billion in fraud occur?
In my opinion, because it was politically beneficial to Democrats. Again, the Somali community is a huge constituency group.
The local Fox affiliate in 2018 investigated why $100 million in cash was being flown from Minneapolis-St. Paul Airport to other countries, including Somalia. Also sharing Hennepin County surveillance videos of daycare centers.
They show parents checking their kids into a center only to leave with them a few minutes later. Sometimes no children would show up. But either way, the center would bill the state for a full day of child care.
The blame has largely fallen on Governor Tim Walz, who this week announced he would no longer be running for a third term. Democrats on Capitol Hill did not deny fraud claims in Minnesota, but accused Republicans of ignoring fraud they say is being carried out by the Trump administration.
Republicans also have a president who has pardoned or reduced jail time for 25 criminals convicted of fraud in this year alone. Now, some of these fraudsters have made also huge campaign contributions to Donald Trump.
The House Oversight Committee has already scheduled a second hearing in February looking into Minnesota fraud. They say if Governor Tim Walz does not accept their invitation to appear, they will likely subpoena him. I'm Christine Frizzell for the National News Desk.
The U.S. population is expected to begin shrinking for the first time ever by 2056 due to low birth rates and reduced immigration. The Congressional Budget Office predicts an increase from 349 million this year to 364 million 30 years from now, but a drop after that. By 2030, CBO estimates the annual death rate will outpace births due to dropping fertility rates, with growth driven mostly by immigration. This could negatively, of course, affect the economy. Weight loss from drugs like Ozempic and Wegovy may be short-lived. Listen to this. A new University of Oxford review of research found that many people who stop taking these drugs will gain the weight back within 2 years and faster than if they had lost weight naturally. The drugs mimic a hormone that makes you feel full. Experts say once you stop taking them, your body might make less of the hormone and then become desensitized to it. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We are taking the pulse of America, and we start in Washington State with a major expansion of Alaska Airlines.
Here it is, the Alaska Airlines global livery.
Alaska Airlines international flights will now sport a Pacific Northwest livery inspired by the Aurora Borealis.
We call it a paint job in Wisconsin.
Alaska Airlines has placed the largest aircraft order in its history, agreeing to buy 105 Boeing 737-10 jets and 5 Boeing 787-10 wide-bodies.
We are creating the fourth global airline in our country to compete against the big three.
The deal means a major expansion of Alaska's travel destinations, with a plan to cross oceans out of its operations hub in the Seattle area.
Ford Motor Company has 5,000 open auto technician positions at its U.S. dealership. CEO Jim Farley calling it a sign that we're in trouble in our country. If positions don't get filled, auto expert and Northwood University professor Tim Nash says Americans could feel the consequences.
The price that people are paying to have their car serviced is a lot higher than it would be. You know, it's simple supply and demand in action. We've got to get those people employed and in the market.
Farley says top-tier experienced technicians can earn up to $120,000 a year at Ford, and the company still can't hire.
Friends, family, and former patients of Dr. Janelle Green-Smith holding vigil in her honor.
It meant everything to me for people to come out, share stories about her legacy, how it was to work with her, the impact that she personally had on their lives.
Smith is remembered for her passion for women's health care and fighting for change.
She was very down to earth, passionate about health care, especially mothers-to-be. You know, that was her passion. She really wanted to highlight what it's like to be a woman of color and, you know, pregnant.
The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention say hundreds of women die each year during pregnancy or within a year after giving birth.
Coming up, the backlash against independent journalists covering hot-button topics like fraud and domestic terrorism. We'll be right back. While Minnesota lawmakers testified on Capitol Hill about their state's widespread fraud scandal, the independent journalist whose viral video helped to push that story into the national spotlight was also speaking out. Nick Shirley said he's facing threats of violence for his reporting, similar to other journalists like Andy Ngo. He spoke to the National News Desk, Jeff Harris.
It's hitting on the nerves of people who don't want the story to be out there.
Senior editor for the Post Millennial, Andy Ngo has experienced threats and violence multiple times covering Antifa in Portland, Oregon. This video from 2019, Ngo being severely beaten and later hospitalized by masked Antifa protesters. Then 2 years later, he was recognized while covering a rally on the anniversary of George Floyd, chased through the street and again beaten.
One may be subjected to actual violence when one's work goes viral and gets a lot of attention.
In October of 2025, Ngo was among the few independent journalists invited to the White House for an Antifa roundtable. Those in attendance highlighting experiences of violence while reporting in the field, an event where he connected with Shirley, later passing along some advice.
I said that expect and prepare for really vicious backlash and potentially even threats.
Following this now viral video released in December showing Shirley knocking on the doors of taxpayer-funded daycares in Minnesota, alleging millions of dollars were funding vacant centers, despite many saying he came outside normal business hours, Shirley says those threats are pouring in.
They're saying, oh, like, kirked. You're going to be kirked.
You're going to be kirked. That's what they're saying.
Yeah, like you're the next. You'll be the next Kirk.
Now, multiple lawmakers, politicians, and media personalities are also speaking out, publicly slamming and questioning Shirley's reporting.
This is what happens when they target communities for their own benefit. This is what happens when they scapegoat.
And this is what happens when they no longer hide the idea of white supremacy.
Nick Shirley's reporting there's no way that this kid walking around uncovered $100 million worth of fraud on his own.
But despite the backlash, the video has pushed the fraud story into the center of the national conversation, prompting Wednesday's House hearing on Capitol Hill and praise from some GOP lawmakers.
It's amazing to me that a 23-year-old journalist, a YouTuber, who's now got over 80 million views on this thing, found more in a matter of hours than Tim Walz and Keith Ellison, our Attorney General, have found in 7 years.
Now, no adding, he believes the criticisms being lobbied at Shirley and others like him aren't because the videos are lies or a hoax, but rather because they're portraying a community in a negative light.
So those type of criticisms are actually quite revealing.
Now, in an interview with conservative political activist Riley Gaines, Shirley also sharing that he would be exposing even more alleged fraud soon. His viral video has now been viewed more than 139 million times. I'm Jeff Harris reporting from Washington.
Coming up, the coaching carousel in the NFL just expanded. The new team looking for a new head coach. We'll be right back. There are now 8 NFL head coaching openings after the Miami Dolphins lead head coach Mike McDaniel let go this morning. The Dolphins finishing season 7-10 after starting 1-6, but the late run wasn't enough to save McDaniel. This follows a widely popular NFL regular season that saw its second highest viewership since 1988. The NFL and Nielsen reports an average of 18.7 million viewers watched each game on digital and television, jumping 10% over the last season. The increase in viewership could be linked to a change in data collection. Nielsen measured this year out-of-home viewers along with data from smart TVs, cable, and satellite for all states except Hawaii and Alaska. Previously, only the top 44 media markets were measured. And that's going to do it for us for this edition of the National News Desk. We invite you to join us again tonight at 10. I'm Dee Dee Gatton. Thanks for watching.